All right, this is Art Jonak, and I'm still here in Oslo, Norway, and I'm sitting here with Orjan Saele and Mr. Orrin Woodward as well. And we're continuing on the mentorship pack, and the purpose of today's conversation is to actually talk about stepping from being mentored, and of course we never stop learning, so we always have mentorship. It's not as if we're going to go, I'm no longer going to get mentored and I'm only going to go mentor. But once you learn some competence, once you've achieved some results and you've actually learned something well, you are put into position to maybe show others how to do that. And somebody may come to you and say, can you show me how to do this? And today we're going to have a dialogue, a conversation on how to do that, the things that we've learned that work, and maybe the things we've learned that didn't work, and the lessons that we've had along the way, so you can borrow from that and step into mentoring a little bit smoother, I guess is the easiest way for me to put that. So talk to me about this, Orrin, is when did you go from a position to say, whoa, I know enough that I actually feel comfortable giving somebody advice?
I think it's, it goes in stages, because I think at first, I don't know if I was actually mentoring more than I was strategizing. I mean, we might get together and talk about, okay, how are we going to go build some depth here, or how are we going to go over here and produce some numbers over here, or produce some volume and help you hit a new rank. So it was more of a strategy. And so, but when you get into mentoring, and hitting on a point you hit on earlier, Art, is it's very important and much better if you're mentoring with someone that's being mentored. Because then if you ask a question, or if you get into an area that's beyond the scope or is limiting your mentor, they have a mentor that they can turn to. And that happens many times where people will come to me and say, man, I was mentoring this guy and he brought up this issue, and man, I wasn't even sure how to answer that. How would you have answered that? Well, that gives me a teachable moment two ways. It gives me a teachable moment with the person I'm mentoring, and then it allows him an opportunity to go back and give the answer. So that now I'm mentoring through mentors and really making an impact. So it starts out more you're strategizing, but I think then eventually it gets into where you're dealing with issues on marriage, or maybe you're dealing with issues on children. You're like, well, what's that got to do with networking? And the answer is everything, because a person can't separate their life. You go out and build a network. Man, I'm one of the most successful networkers in the world. I've ruined my marriage, I've ruined my kids, and I've ruined my finances. But boy, am I a success. It's like, no, you got to take faith, family, finance, fitness, friends, and you look at the holistic package and you say, why are people building a network? Is they wanted to be happy. And in order to be happy, it's kind of hard. I don't care how much money you're making. If you've destroyed all the relationships with all your friends, you've ruined your joy, which has ruined your happiness, which means beginning with the end in mind, you totally are off track. So to me, when I sit down with a person, I got to look at that person. I'm never going to agree to mentor someone until I love that person. And everything I'm going to tell that person is, if I was sitting in their chair, that's what I would do with the information I know.
One of the sayings that I've tend to use is to say, I will never lie to you. I will never tell you something that's going to hurt you, to the best of my knowledge. Now, maybe a year from now, I have a different perspective, and I'll say, I told you to do that Facebook thing, and in hindsight, Facebook was stupid. I don't know, but to the best of my knowledge, I will never try to hurt you. And that's the sense that I get from you as you explain this, is that I want to love you and tell you everything I can to the best of my knowledge, if you want to hear the advice or not. How do we know we're ready to actually mentor? Because that's an awkward step to go from I'm the teacher, I'm the student, and whoa, somebody just asked me for advice, somebody just asked me for help.
Well, I think in networking, a lot of times the person you're mentoring with will let you know, it's like, you know what, you're getting so many leaders in your group, I can't mentor them all. And so hopefully if you're in the proper mentorship, but let's say you didn't have a mentor, when it gets to, it's just going to naturally start happening, because as you go out there and perform and start producing results, people are going to look up to you. And if you're producing results, there are specific reasons, there are specific principles that you're applying on a consistent basis that most of your team is not applying. And so they're going to start looking at you as, man, I wish I could produce the type of results that Orjan's producing. And they're going to start coming to Orjan saying, Orjan, help me. How are you doing this? Or, man, and you're going to start looking almost as a doctor, but not a doctor of the body, a doctor of the mind, and you're going to be listening and asking questions so you can determine, get a prognosis, so you can get to the point where you have a diagnosis and some suggestions to improve.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we come out of the book, The Slight Edge, Jeff also talks about, you go from learned knowledge, which is the books and CDs, and you go to activity knowledge, applying the books and CDs, and we talk about that in launching a leadership revolution, competence. So you go from learned knowledge to activity knowledge, from activity knowledge to modeling knowledge, where you find the mentors, you say, I'm going to model what they do, and then you finally get into that growth curve, which is you're actually, teaching knowledge, you're teaching others.
That's right.
But a lot of people want to jump from learn knowledge, books and CDs, to teaching.
Yes, and I want to jump in right there. Sorry for breaking you off, Art.
That's exactly where I was going to end.
But it's just that little thing that mentorship comes with numbers. There is many people out there that wants to be a mentor that doesn't have the numbers, and they can't show you how to get the numbers. But when you have the numbers, you can show other people what you've done, so you can mentor them to get the numbers that you are currently getting. And you can only mentor somebody to the level where you are at. So to be a good leader and a good mentor for the people you're working with, you constantly have to get better, so that you constantly raise the bar on yourself and you can raise the bar on the people you're mentoring. So for me, it was by default. Like, I never set up to, I want to mentor this and this many people. Still to this day, I don't have a list of the people I want to mentor. But when 1,500 people showed up, signed up in 3 months, and I was 21 years old, you kind of had some people asking, how did you do that? Mm-hmm. And you started trying and failing, and trying and failing, and then correcting and adjusting, and eventually you started to get some of those mentor skills. And I think that the first step is a little bit of coaching, and then a little bit more of coaching, and you get really good at that. And then you can take on the mentorship responsibility, where when I move from coaching, which I will do with anybody on my team when I have the time for it, and that is in the proper manners, I'll do that with anybody. But mentorship I won't take on with everybody, because I want that person to be ready before I want to mentor them. So I'm going to give them some specific task, and if they do that task, then they move one step closer to being mentored, and then I might give them another task. And on some occasions, people have risen up so fast that I jump in and say, hey, let's go and have half an hour.
So define that for me, the difference between coaching and mentoring.
Coaching is when you sit down and you talk about the tactics of the business, or coaching is when you sit down and you don't even talk about the tactics, but you ask them, what do you want to get? And you just help them finding their path. That's coaching. While it comes to mentorship, the person has to want to have a part of what you have. And that's also in the selection of my mentors. I'm very careful. Do I want to have what this mentor have? And that's why I check out different areas in their life, because it's not always I want to have what they have. But mentorship is not only teaching, not only giving knowledge, not only giving them direction, is also giving them a part of you. So you actually can connect in a way where you take on a certain part of the spirit of that person, and that would propel you faster. So mentorship is a little bit more, it's the energy level of the person you're taking on. And you got to be careful on who do you want to mentor you, and who do you want to mentor because of that.
Right. Okay, so just to go from the, we've talked about why to get mentored, and let's say that you're now creating results, so you can feel confident to say, I will be able to teach others on the results that I've achieved. But not so good of an idea to simply teach on what you've maybe just read and not experienced and had success in. Now, if we all did that, I think our profession would be way beyond where it is today. Because I personally think it's one of the kind of, I wouldn't call it a disease, that's a very negative word, but it's kind of a trap that I fell into early. I read this book, now I was an expert on this topic. No, right? I read the book, I had to go learn and do and achieve on it.
Well, I mean, let's look at it. It's like success is 3 things: learn, do, teach. And you can't go from learn to teach because you haven't done yet. And you really haven't learned until you can do. In other words, so you might have a theory, You might have a theoretical knowledge of, oh, I just read this book on building depth. Now I know how to build depth. No, you know the principles of building depth until you go out living room, house to house to house, building depth and building relationships in depth. And when you do that, then you take your theoretical or intellectual knowledge and make it into practical knowledge, and you can apply those together. Then you're at a point where you can take that and say, boy, hey, now you read this book or you listen to this CD, and now let's get back together and let me show you the best way to teach anything is by doing, and taking them along and doing. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how to ride a bike. If you guys had never ridden a bike, for example, I could sit here and intellectually tell you everything about bike riding I know. We could watch every video on bike riding and every CD on it, but until you get on the bike and lean too far to the right and fall over and say, hey, note to self, lean a little more to the left. And that's the way you learn it, do it, and then after you've done it, then you're in a position where you can teach others.
And really learning, I mean, is the easy part.
Yeah.
I mean, reading, anybody can do it. Is watching a DVD, anybody can do. Listening to CDs, anybody can do. Teaching is actually pretty easy too, because you're kind of showing off almost your knowledge. The doing part is kind of the more difficult part. And sometimes you'll notice that people, they listen to CDs, then they start teaching, yet nobody's listening to them. Well, there's a reason, because the middle part to do, the competence wasn't there. And I know one of my mentors at one point said, Art, you need to develop your speaking skills more. And I said, great. So I started reading books, on speaking. Carnegie wrote a great book and so forth. And he noticed that I was reading and reading. He said, now, the next 30 days, we're going to go do 17 workshops together, and you got the first hour. And I learned how to speak. It was by doing. And as you said, let's go do this together. It was fantastic. Let's go into the mode of a little bit of a role play, maybe, of, let's say, Orjan, that you were going to, be mentored by Orrin. What are some of the first things you would tell Orjan here?
Yeah, and before I'll get Orrin to take that task, which I would love, I would just say that when you're going to mentor somebody, they become your proteges. So that's why I'm a little bit careful in the selection, and that not everybody is let in immediately, because they're going to talk about me as their mentor, and I'm going to talk about them as people I'm mentoring. And that means that my character will be reflected through the people that is out there being mentored by me. And that's why I put the bar a little bit higher for mentorship than coaching, like I mentioned. So we've gotten to know each other a little bit now. So and for the role play of this CD, we can definitely do this. But I would love to have a person like Orrin in my life as a mentor. I've studied his personal life, his study life. I've gotten to spend time with his 4 kids, which are incredible. I don't know how that is done. I'm still looking for the blue pill they get every morning. But they're amazing. They're amazing. And I've had personal time to just chat with his wife, and I've heard him share about your relationship. I've gotten insight on the knowledge side. I know the wealth side already, and I know the numbers that he have been performed. So for me, that would be a big step up to get somebody like him to mentor me. But then the process starts, and that is that, no, I found out I want him as a mentor. Let's go and get him. I talked to Art, which knew him. We talked about like all the things on the last CD on how we actually find out what does he like. So eventually we've gotten him to Norway, and we're right here. And this is more live than you would realize. and no, he is gonna start from the opposite side, because he's gonna be my mentor in this. And then there is immediately gonna be some demands on me. So how do you start that process, Art?
Well, I mean, normally it's not someone quite at Orjan's level when we're getting...
And let's just clear that up, because you might be saying, hey, I'm looking to build a business. I just joined, which isn't what Orjan's asking for mentorship here.
Sure.
How do I launch my business?
So
it could be that same advice.
Right. Just a little introduction.
I love that.
So getting started with the new person, and I loved your point, Orjan, on when you agree to mentor someone, now your character, their character ties in with your character. So that's one of the things, in our Leadership Revolution book, Launching a Leadership Revolution, we talked about character, task, and relationships. what I look for when I'm going to mentor someone is that student, that hungry student, and our goal is to help develop their character, help develop their tasks, the specific things that they've got to do on a consistent basis to win, the habits formed, and then help develop their relationships, building that tact in order to get things done without, the old, how do you remove a fly from someone's forehead? Well, certainly not with an axe. And yet so many people tend to, well, there's a fly. I got it. I got rid of it. Yeah, I split the skull in half too, but boy, that fly is gone. And yet so many people do that. So
wait a minute. We went to some. We saw some Viking museums today. I think some of those guys use an axe.
Well, I'll tell you, when you use an axe, you'll split the skull, but you'll miss the fly.
That's exactly right. We might have did worse than what we intended there. So, but anyway, so when I'm looking at sitting down and agreeing to mentor someone, I'm looking in those three areas and saying, yes, I believe this person's hungry, and I believe with the right help, with their hunger, plus some of the information that we're going to bring to the table, that we can help. Lori and I will agree with the couple if they're married and help them in developing into the holistic approach to success. So we're looking for someone that's willing to go out in the task. And when you got to get some agreements up front. I want to, a lot of times in mentoring, I think false expectations, the role of what the mentor is going to do and the role of what the student's going to do. The mentor is not going to make the student win. I don't care how good the mentor is. Unless the mentor is going to show every plan, the mentor is not good enough. I'm not good enough to help. I have a hard enough time helping myself win doing the work. I'm certainly not good enough to help somebody else win doing all the work for them as well. Mm-hmm. So I got to get right up front that it's like you're the one who's going to do the majority of the lifting here. I'm going to teach you the right techniques to make your lifting easier, the right leverage, for example, to do this. But when it's your victory, when you go out and hit new ranks, new levels, new pins, I'm not going to go up on stage for an hour and talk about how I did it because I didn't do it. We're going to have you go up there. So, Orrin, when you go win, it's your victory. All I did, I just provided the information on how I had my victory. And so I will be on that front of that stage, or they're handing you the new rank, and we'll be celebrating together your victory, but it's your victory.
So what I'm hearing is that when the basic qualities for leadership is in place, you're ready to mentor somebody. So they're hungry, they're humble, and they're honorable. We can take on the mentorship.
Yeah. That's right. Absolutely.
And then for practical reasons, if I was then going to mentor Art here, maybe one of the first sessions would be we sit down, have this talk like, so Art, I'm going to help you win, but you're doing the victory. You're the one that's going to go out there and fight. Mm-hmm. So he is clear about that, and that you'll be doing the work, and also you'll get recognition for it so that they know that this is not you giving them a handout, but it's you giving them a hand up.
Amen.
So that position is in place. But how do you practically do you use the trilateral leadership lavender for the mentoring session? Is that something you practically use?
Let me just hop in real quick. Yeah. What's another word for honeable? Like, what's another way to say that? Because that's a kind of a strange word.
Yeah, honeable is just meaning that you're flexible, willing to change. Yeah, you're growable. You can take any area that you need to make some changes in, and you're changeable. So honeable is more of an engineering term where you hone a piece of metal, but you also can hone in on your character. You can hone in on your task and do a better job.
All right, so you're hungry, which is you want knowledge, honeable, willing to change, and then honorable, you're developing character if you don't have it yet. And then you mentioned the trilateral leadership. Now, some of you may not know what that is. That's inside the Launching a Leadership Revolution book. Just a reference there. You can check it out there as well.
Yeah, and Orrin here mentioned character, task, and relationship, because that is the three parts of trilateral leadership lavender.
Right.
It's hard in my second language to say that word.
You got it good.
But after looking at honorable 10 times, I did understand what it means, so I had the second word for that as well. Willing to be formed is how I translate it.
There you go. Great.
It's
Perfect.
like you can actually form them into something else. If you are a solid rock, you're not necessarily willing to be formed. You could be carved, but that takes a lot more work. But if you're a piece of clay, they can work with you and they can form you, and you're willing to be soft and actually say that I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn.
Let's look at this trilateral leadership ledger, just a quick explanation. It's like, you know, if you score yourself from 0, being the worst you can score in character, to 10 being, boy, you're the best person character ever walked the earth. A task, the same thing, from 0 to 10. And relationships from 0 to 10. A perfect score would be a 10 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 10, which is 1,000. And no human being outside of one ever scored a perfect score on that. And then most people, when they get started in networking, are actually scoring 0, because in one of those areas, if not multiple, whether it's character, boy, they just don't hold the line on themselves, tasks, they're just not willing to do the work yet, or relationships. I mean, for sure, in my case, my score on relationships was 0, and if there would have been a negative score, I would have achieved it, you know. So my total score of 1 times 1 times 0 was ultimately a 0. So I had no ability to lead because I had no influence, because my score was 0. And to answer your point, Orrin, I don't necessarily pull out the trilateral leadership, but everything I'm doing in that mentoring session is revolving around, are we working on character now? Are we working on tasks? And are we working on relationships? And so let's say I'm sitting down with you for the first time. I've agreed to mentor you now. The first thing I'm going to do is I make sure that we have an agreement that, listen, I understand it's going to take time to do character. I understand it's going to take time on relationships. Those things, even if you read a book, they're not going to change overnight. You're not just going to change years, 20 years, 30 years of developing habits on relationship. You're not going to change those after reading one book. But one thing we're going to get agreement, the reason we're sitting down is because you've already convinced me you're willing to do the work, the task. And so, you know, for example, if I said 15 plans is what it's going to take to win in this business, you know, I think most networkers...
15 plans a month.
That's right. If they're doing 15 plans a month, if they're out of their house, I mean, certainly you show up to a job 25 times a month. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility you could represent your business 15 times. If you do that, then I know you're doing enough tasks that, remember, Art, you were saying that learn, do, teach. Most people neglect to teach. The do part, yeah. I want to make sure we got that right now, that we're getting together because you've already proven to me that you're a worker, that you're willing to go out and show 15. So you're a moving car, so my steering is going to help you. And at any point you choose not to press the pedal down and be a moving car, at any point you choose not to show 15 plans, I'm not offended. You don't owe me anything. But don't be offended at me if that in my mentoring schedule that I only keep people in there that do have the task, since we know character times task times relationships equal results. If at any time you choose not to do the task, I know your score is going to be 0. I don't need to get with you an hour every month to know that you're 0 in your results, because how could anybody influence anybody if they don't even show up?
To show the plan, just to clarify, some of you may not be familiar with that terminology, that's basically show your business. It's however it is that you show your business, share the opportunity, about a 40-minute presentation, 30-minute presentation. We were talking, you know, yesterday and the night before, we've had some great days here. When you sit down with somebody to mentor them, one of the things that you got this amazing verbiage that says, you know, I want to keep our friendship first. And can you share that verbiage, what that would look like if you sat down with us?
Well, okay.
Or one of us at a time, of course.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there, because before he'll do that, he actually said that the first part of the conversation would be them to let out all the information and let them talk about everything going on in their life. And what he's doing is that you're in fact analyzing, is it task, is it character, is there a relationship that we have the lowest score on? So that's an analytical process. Empty out everything, get it on the table, and then you'll make the agreement. And let's say that I've been talking around here and we've been talking for these days. So let's say that you see that on the task part, I'm a bit under the score on the character or relationship. So how would we start our official mentoring session?
So if you use an analogy, like if you're sick, let's say, man, you're just not feeling good, you try to shake it, and the third day you decide to go into the doctor. So you're sitting there waiting, the nurse lets you in the room, and you're waiting for the doctor to come in. If the doctor comes in, looks at you, starts talking to you, never asked you a question, didn't check your pulse, didn't even check your temperature. He starts talking to you for the next 40 minutes and then hands you a couple pills, say, take these, you'll feel better in the morning. You're probably looking at him saying, man, he didn't even ask me how I felt. He didn't even ask me what was wrong. And he's already onto the diagnosis telling me, it's like, you know, to me, I'm always concerned. It's like, to me, a mentoring relationship with the student is not the mentor always talking. I say, man, if I sit down for 50 minutes or an hour and a half and do all the talking, well, they probably could have learned all that just listening to one of my CDs, because anything I would tell them in person, I've already told them on CD, or else, you know, well, I wouldn't be hiding anything. So when we get together in a mentoring relationship, it takes it to the next level, because now I'm sitting down with Orrin, for example, and I want to know, where is Orrin at in his leadership journey? What are the things that he's doing right? Because I really want to listen to that, because I want to point those out to him, because he's going to need to know that. Because the journey of leadership, he's going to take a lot of shots. There's going to be people that tell him he's a total loser and why is he even doing this thing, and he's crazy. And so he's got to have somebody in his corner says, well, hey, Orrin, yeah, you're still learning, but let me tell you, you've showed 15 plans or more the last 3 months in a row. Do you realize the small percentage of people who will ever do that in networking? I mean, you've already entered into rarefied air by doing that, and you're just getting started. I mean, the future, from my side of the table, knowing what I know from my perspective, I'm fired up. So I'm almost, you're here kind of down and wondering because you only got one yes last month. I'm thinking fired up. If you knew what I knew, you'd be fired up like me. You see, now that's his perspective. That's taking the same situation and reframing it to where when Orrin leaves, he came in carrying the weight of the world. He's leaving charging the world. Because he's seeing a different perspective on the same situation.
So that's empowerment. You're empowering people, recognizing the good parts in them.
One of the things that I found over the last couple of years has been very effective is I've climbed the mountain a little bit more, and people look and say, well, yeah, Orrin can do it, but I don't think I can do it. What I'll do is say, Orrin, I know you sit there sometimes and you wonder if you can do this. But understand, I'm sitting down with you. I wouldn't sit down with you if I wasn't absolutely convinced that you can do this. So unless you're disagreeing with me, you should know you can do this. And if they respect me, they're like, well, yeah, if Orrin believes I can do this, maybe I can do this. So I said, we got to get that off the table. It's not a question of, can you do this? The only question on the table is, will you do this? I'm going to give you the right information. If you just run up that hill, I know we'll get the result. You remember earlier...
I love what you just said, and I just want to point that out in case we missed and that slip by. It's not going to slip by. When your mentor sits down with you, they sit down with you because they believe you have the capability of doing whatever they've done.
Why would I sit down? I had nothing better to do with my hour. I couldn't think of anything to do with my 4 kids. I couldn't think of anything to do with my wife or my other friends in the world. I couldn't think of anything else to do than just to waste time, waste their time, and waste my time sitting down talking about a business that I know they can't do. That's insane.
But it's incredible. I'm excited because that means that if I can just get the right mentor, I can go to the top of any field that I want to go to the top of. It's excitement enough.
As long as they believe that you can do that. And they wouldn't sit down with you unless they believed that you could do that.
And that was what I got, which I like so much. I mean, you're so lucky if you have a mentor because they believe in you.
Yeah.
But the step from you believing in them to them performing it, the doing part, what do we do? Because I've sat down with people that I've believed in and that I've been trying to give my very best that haven't performed to the level I believed they could perform.
Sure. You know, this weekend I think one of the talks, at some point I talked about the farmer wondering if he can plant the field. You know, it's funny in life how many things that we take for granted that require faith. But nearly anything you do requires faith. When you go to work in the morning, it requires faith to know that the people that are driving cars in the opposite direction will stay in their lane. You know, because you're whipping by at 60 miles an hour, they're whipping by at 60. That's a pretty big accident that occurs, you know, if they don't stay in their lane. if you're a farmer and you're farming your field, it takes faith for that farmer to go out and invest in a tractor. He has to invest, if he's planting corn, for example, he has to invest in a seed corn. He's got to have that if he's going to have corn come back. And then he's got to invest a lot of time to go into his field and plant that field and to go reap so he can sow. Well, if he doesn't do that, can you imagine a farmer sitting at his table and sitting there talking to his wife and saying, man, I just don't know if I have what it takes. You know, I'm just not sure if I plant that corn, if that corn's going to come up. What if I do all that work and it doesn't happen? What if I do all that work and something binds and the corn doesn't actually get fed into the furrow? What if I do all that work and a big flood happens and my field's all destroyed? And they spend the whole year wondering if they're worthy to have that field. If I come over their house every 30 days and sit down, oh, you're still wondering if you can do it. Well, I'm not shocked that they're not going to have corn at the end of the year. As their mentor, I'd say, like, you know, after 30 days, I can say, listen, if you're just going to stay here thinking about whether you're going to get corn, I can solve this one for you and save you 11 months. You're not going to have any corn in 11 months because you're not even willing to plant the field. I mean, it requires faith to have a harvest of the corn even after you plant the field. You're asking for an outright miracle if you're expecting corn and you won't even plant it. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's like, man, if we're going to sit down, we got an agreement. You're going to be out plant. When we sit down, I want to see the soil. I want to see the dust on you. I want to see you wiping the sweat from your forehead that you've been out in the battle, out in that field, planting the corn. So then we can talk about how to make sure that we put all the odds in our favor of getting a harvest. But if you won't even go out and plant the corn, don't mind me if I go to other farmers that are actually planting it, because they're going to need my information a lot more than you, who are still pondering to be or not to be.
So that means that if my lowest scoring rate was, let's say, task, the first thing you would do to make sure is that I'm showing at least 15 plants a month. But what if my lowest score was in character?
Well, and before we go there, again, let's just set up the permission to mentor. Like the verbiage on that, because there's a lot of times where I've done this, I'm as guilty as anywhere, but we'll see somebody say, hey, can I have help? The mentor jumps in, the permission wasn't set up, and problems happen down the road. But
yeah, I'm not going to jump on you. Let's say if you're doing the work, okay, that is my one non-negotiable. If you won't go into the field, if you won't go out and plant, then I can't expect you to have a harvest, because I'm not expecting an outright miracle anytime soon. Faith, yes. Miracle, no, okay? Now, let's say you are doing the work. Now I have something to work with. Now you're out there doing it. If you're lacking character, let's say that you keep saying, I'll be there at 7 and you show up at 7:30. And you'll start finding that your team will start, I mean, it's like in networking, people start talking. It's like, well, I can't trust Orrin to show up on time. Or he keeps exaggerating. He said he had 100 people there. There was only 30 people in the room. You know, all the kind of crazy stuff. All that, I expect that. Man, when you go into the world and bring people in, man, if I can get a person that will actually do the work, then I have some ability to start steering them. If I built a relationship with them where they respect me, and I'm not going to go in there and say, you know, Orrin, the reason you're not growing is you don't have character. Because that's that axe upside the forehead, and that's going to knock a lot of people just get knocked out on that. But I'll start asking them questions and get to the point, I say, Orrin, I said, man, you are doing so many things right. If I saw a couple areas where I think if we did just a tweak or two, I mean, if you look at the fact that you're willing to show 15 plants for 3 months in a row, you put yourself in such rarefied air. If I could do just a couple tweaks, I think we could take your results to the next level. But the last thing, I mean, I'm sitting over here, it's like, boy, if I said this and it came out wrong, I might offend you. And the last thing I want to do is offend you. I would never sit down with you with the goal, I'm going to take the next hour and hurt my friend Orrin. So I'm going to need, do I have permission to talk freely on a couple subjects, not with the intention of hurting you, but with the intention of less tweaking and steering it just a little bit so we can take your results to the next level?
You have my permission, even on CD.
And you see, and if you get that, and that's what typically is say, no, I came over here because I want to learn. I mean, if they're out showing 15, 20 plans, chances are they want to learn. But even with their permission, you've got to walk softly. You got to speak softly. you got to let them know it's almost hurting, and it generally is, because I don't. All I want to see is Orrin grow as a human being, be a better leader, be a better husband, be a better in all areas of his life. And so I want him to feel that and sense that. So then I say, you know, it's like when you're out showing the plan, one of the things I learned, and then I'll put it back on myself. When I got started, I said, hey, I'll be there when I'm there. And you know what I found out? I found out that a lot of people were reading that when I'd show up at 7:15 and I was supposed to be there at 7. They were fine. They were taking that as I didn't care about their time. And when I started communicating I didn't care about their time, they started saying, well, they're really communicating that Orrin doesn't care about me. And that was the last thing. Man, I just had so many things going. I thought, oh, everybody will understand. Well, I decided at that moment that my goal was to be there 5 minutes early. I wanted to be if I said 7, I'll be there, even if I'm waiting in my car listening to a CD before walking in, because I wanted to be prompt. I found that the people that seem to have the biggest business, when they say they're there at 7, they're there at 7, if not 5 minutes before. And it said, I believe that that's a principle, Orrin, if you take just that principle, combined with your amazing work ethic, if you take that principle of promptness, and say, whatever comes out of your mouth, just for the next 30 days, and you're going to have to do the same thing I had to do. For the next 30 days, whatever comes out of your mouth, you make sure, is it 100% accurate, and can I follow through on that 100%, or why am I saying it?
And that's just incredible advice. And people listening in, like character building books, do you have 2 or 3 that you can mention from the top of your head?
Absolutely. Speed of Trust, which is Stephen M.R. Covey, Stephen Covey's son. The Speed of Trust is a fantastic book. In fact, I had my son Lance recently read that as we were going through and talking about some areas of trust. And he said, Dad, that was one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's a deeper book, but boy, it'll really make you search. Now, certainly the Bible is a book that I read on character on a daily basis. An excellent book on looking at, here's the general principle on character. Are you who you say you are? Because remember, Orrin, you just started a leadership journey and you're out there doing the work anyway. It's like you can fool, Abraham Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. When you decide you're going to be a leader and you climb that hill, everybody's going to be able to see your actions anyway. Let's make sure that everything we do, if we can't write it in the sky, why would we do it to begin with? That's the beginning of character. Are we who we say we are? Mm-hmm. And if we're not, you know what? You wouldn't say, if we're not, guess what? None of us are always who we say we are.
So a good old myth of network marketing, fake it till you make it. Have to go out the door right now and never come back. Stay out there. Get it out there.
I say faith it until you make it, not fake it.
I think that's a much better version of that one.
Yeah, you mentioned at one point the gap between who you are and who you say you are is what creates stress in your life.
That's right.
And maybe you go into the mentorship initially thinking, hey, I'm going to put stuff on Facebook, or I'm going to fake it till I make it, or whatever it is that you're portraying out there. But again, in the mentorship role, we have to say, no, let's be honest here, and who you are is who you are, and then let's build you up to who you maybe want to get to.
Absolutely.
And let's eliminate that stress.
And I just want to add a book to the book list, and that's Launching a Leadership Revolution.
Absolutely.
I think on this subject of understanding character, I think that book was amazing, and also on leadership in general. So that's a recommended reading.
So when you sit down with somebody that you're mentoring, would it be fair to say that first, our friendship is first and foremost, and the business is second, and if you think that our friendship is going to get hurt in this process, then maybe we shouldn't take this path? Do you give the person an out? Is it?
Well, for sure. I mean, in other words, mentorship has to be on both of us, the freedom to enter and freedom to exit. In other words, if I felt that, you know what, one of the... Like if we agree that we're going to address these areas, let's say it gets really bad. Let's say someone is doing an open meeting somewhere and is taking the money at the end and not,
that's not that uncommon.
Yeah, so something like that. Like, that's like, we sit down, this wouldn't happen with Orrin, but let's say I was sitting down with someone and addressing this. I'd say, I said, this is like a major to me. In other words, because everyone knows. I've already agreed, and I said, boy, I believe in your character. I believe in where it's going. And I said, and this is one of those issues that is like a game stopper. Like, in other words, like, you know what? I'm okay if you mess this up. If we can come clean on exactly what happened and what steps do we have to put in place to ensure this never happens again. Because this is damaging your reputation and character, and it's damaging my reputation and character. So I need you to help me here.
Yeah. And that's a very important subject, because we know it happens, and it happens across every organization. And I don't think it's that people willfully are planning it up in advance that I'm going to get to that rank and then I'm going to run home with the money. But it's life gets in the way, and old habits show up, and you just do what you're used to do.
I was just going to use the money for a bit. I thought I was going to have this back, but now it's not here.
And then this other money, and that guy didn't pay me back. And
so people are human, though. So that's the lesson, as long as we can fix.
And I like that is a game stopper, but if they're willing to correct it,
absolutely,
you'll
all day
continue
long
to mentor them. So you don't expect them to be perfect. You don't expect them to go all the steps without doing any harm. You expect them to correct when they do game stopping activity.
If they're perfect, I know they're lying to me. Okay, so they're not perfect again. But actually, the idea is law and grace. If you're going to be the right type of mentor, you have to show grace to your student, because what you're asking is your student to come to you with their whole life and tell the truth. Well, if you're a law person and everything they tell you, you're going to, well, that's wrong, and you sit there and they're throwing the law at them, then you're literally denying them the opportunity to grow in that area, because you might have some information, you should have some information that's going to help them, just as your mentor is going to help you in areas where you need grace. All of us as human beings need grace, because we're not perfect. Our intentions and our actions do not always match up. And so if our own intentions and actions don't match up, why are we throwing the book at somebody else when that same thing happens to them? What we have to do is offer them information, offer them better ideas, better strategies to implement in their life, to where they can reduce the amount of times the intentions and actions don't line up. And reduce the amount of times where it doesn't line up, so they have more character, where who they say they are and who they are line up.
As close as possible.
That's right.
But
as
not
close
touch.
You can. You're never going to be perfect. As John Wooden said, you're never going to be perfect, but you should be striving for perfection every day.
So let's jump across, and let's say that you discovered it was the relationship area of my life that was the lowest score. How do you start out the mentoring process then?
Orrin, when we're looking at where you're at, as far as character, in the last year, I don't think there's anybody on my entire team that's grown more in character than you have. You went from struggling to be there on time, where you're there all the time. Everything you've ever told me, I mean, I look at it so consistently, it's like amazing to me how consistent you've been. When you say you're going to get this done, you get it done. When you set goals, and man, sometimes even when you miss the goal, I look at the work ethic you put in. You have climbed your character score, nearly doubled your character score in the last year. I mean, who could ask for anything more? It takes a lot of courage to do that, because you've confronted a lot of things in yourself. You look at your task. There isn't anybody on the team working harder than you. You're out there not 15 times, you're 20, 25 times a month. So you look at that, you're like, character multiplied by task. You take a look at this relationship score. If we do the same thing in the relationship side that you've already shown you're capable of doing, you've already shown you have the character to do it, because looking at your character score. If we do the same thing with the relationship side that you've already done on your character, you're going to have results that are going to blow away anybody else on the team, because your courage is off the charts. Are you ready to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Basically, what you've done here is you said, look, 75% is already right. If we just fix that other 25% or 15%, man, you're right there.
And you've already shown the capability of doing it, because I've already seen you have a victory in another area. Now, how do you see how that success breeds success, as long as there's still hunger?
Yeah. And that hunger is increased when you edify the way you do. I can feel that across the table in the role play, that we're getting hungrier by the minute because we see how this works. There's a lot of energy, enthusiasm, encouragement, and edification of people that make them raise, and you raise the bar on them, and they raise the bar on themselves, which means that they will go to the next level through the mentorship. And just from picking up in a conversation, the first step is activity. And last night we had a talk with one of the leaders on my team, and we talked about achievement, that after the activity is done, we got to look at some achievement. How do you specifically do that in mentorship process?
Now, every organization might have different programs they're running to produce results. So, for example, we have a certain program that we run on every quarterly basis that we're running. And so, it's a certain amount of depth and per leg. And I'm like, hey, if you're out there doing the activities, and at first, boy, we're excited about the activity because that starts the plan, do, check, and adjust process. But over time, now it's time to go out there and hit a new rank. It's time to go build numbers in multiple legs and start setting some of those criteria. And then, so in that phase where it's like, man, they're not quite a top leader to where, boy, they're just every 30 days we're getting together. But they're certainly not brand new where it's a 15 plan anymore. Now it's something like, all right, you go out and when you hit so many levels of depth over here and you hit so many levels in depth over here, let's get back together. Now, if it takes you 30 days to do that, we'll get back together in 30 days. If it takes you 3 years to do that, I guess we get back together in 3 years. And in the process of doing that, see, what it does is it puts the responsibility, the onus, on the student to go do the work. If we're not getting together, it's not because I don't want to get together. I would love to get together with each of the people I'm mentoring every 30 days. But it allows me to mentor twice as many people because half of them won't do what it takes, or maybe a third, whatever. But what happens is when they don't, they're not mad at me that we're not getting together. They're holding themselves accountable and say, I got to go out and do this work. And when I see them the next time, I can come up to Art and say, man, Art, I was really hoping that we'd get together last month. When are you giving me a call? How close are you to hitting that assignment so that we can get back together? There's a lot of things I want to share with you.
And this is amazing, but what do you do when you get the following phone call? And I'm saying, hi, this is Orrin calling, and you'll pick up. And I'm saying, you know what? I'm just struggling so much in my business now, and it seems like I can't get it together. And could we sit down? Could we get another couple of hours together so we could continue this mentoring process?
Well, now let me do one caveat here. Let's say if you called me up and you and Hilda were having such marital strife, or if another couple, there's something wrong with their child, if there's something that just some chicken hit the fan so bad that it's just so outside the realm, then absolutely I would sit down. My principle is 1% of 99% of your time in networking is charity, and 1% makes you wealthy. So I'm certainly going to make sure I do my 1% right, but I know there's many times if someone has an issue with their marriage, they're not even someone I'm mentoring. If I've got the time and I can squeeze them in to help that person, 100% charity, I'm willing to do it. If I never make a penny, they quit my business tomorrow if I can help them anyway. But now let's get back to the mentoring side. From the mentoring side, I would say something like this. I said, Orrin, Hilda's okay? Everything's good? Okay?
Oh, yeah, but my goldfish is swimming the wrong direction.
I said, Orrin, the last thing I would ever do, you are way too much of a winner for me to ever lower the bar on you. I wouldn't do that to you. Listen, how far are you into hitting that goal? Did you get, you got 3 levels over here and only 1 over here. Okay, so we got a couple more over here and 1 more over here to do. Listen, I don't care what it is. Let's figure out, we need a little strategy right here, but let's make sure we hit this, because I know you're too much of a winner. If I lower the bar on you here, what I'm communicating to you is I don't think you have what it takes, and I will never do that to you.
Fantastic.
Case closed.
And that's incredible, and I enjoy the way you're making sure that this is not in a situation where people go through dramatic events in their life, because then we are always there to help, always to serve, because we want them to have a healthy life and we want them to get their marriage together. But if it's the goldfish swimming the wrong direction, And that's their excuse, that it means that they just didn't do the task, but they wanted your time. You keep the bar up. You don't lower it so that they have to stretch.
Those who stay will be champions.
In wrapping up, talk to me real quickly. Improper correction in mentoring, what does that mean?
When you're mentoring, it requires tact. And this is something that I work on to this day. You know, my natural personalities can be very direct. I know that I can distinctly remember a couple people where I feel personally, it was my actions that caused them to quit the business. In fact, I think networking wide, if you look at it statistically, more people quit this business due to hurt feelings than they ever do lack of money.
Yes.
And I think I contributed to that. And it hurts me to this day to think, one of my goals is to never be the reason why someone quits my business. I never want to be the reason. Now, will they quit my business? Sure, they're going to quit your business, but never be the reason they quit your business. And so if you're mentoring, I've seen, there are a lot of people that think they're mentoring, and what they're actually doing is slicing and dicing, because they sit down with, it's very easy to see someone else's faults. It's very easy for me to sit down with either one of you and recognize areas like, man, if they change this, very easy, just as it's easy for you to see my faults. It's very hard to see your own. But if you can recognize that you have them, and then you can recognize, now how would you want to be treated with it? He's like, man, when Lori and I have to sit down and she has to point out areas where she thinks, Orrin, when you're doing this, it's really hurting my feelings. Like, oh, that kills me to think that I'm doing that because I don't want to hurt her feelings. But I also recognize, man, there's just certain habits I've developed over the years that are just wrong, and it takes time to change those. And Lori shows me grace, giving me time to change in the same way here. But if you sit down with someone and you just blast them, boy, it feels real good. Boy, look at you wielding this super knowledge that you have, you know, and your Jedi mastery, able to tell them something, and you just let them have it. Well, let's just face it. You just don't have the guts to build this business. The bottom line is you're chicken. And until you get a backbone, you're never going to grow. You say, has that ever happened? I've heard it happen. In fact, one time I almost said those type words, and it's embarrassing to this day to think how off track I was. But PDCA had to learn the process. You know, that person didn't quit my business overnight. He stuck around for another year, but I never had the same relationship. I never realized how much my words of encouragement meant to him. And I never realized how bad I hurt him by saying words like that. Yeah. So improper correction is coming at it from, you know, before you ever give words of correction, say, if you were sitting on the other side of the table, how would you want to be treated? And even if you, even when you know it and they've given you permission, walk softly, very, you know, and if you, as much as you can, you know, there's so many things I did wrong in this business. There's very little that I can't use myself as an example of doing it wrong. And I always try to bring it around to where it's like, Orrin, you and I both had this issue. You and I both had to get through this. Man, I made it through, you'll make it through. It's not a big deal. A lot of leaders have this. So that I can help them feel like, hey, they're part of a, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club that's got to work on tact. Welcome to, you know, say, Orrin, your work ethic, you hold the bar so high on yourself. One of the things that when you're working with your team is to recognize most people are unwilling to hold the bar so high. So when you communicate them the way you talk to yourself, you're hurting their feelings. I know you're not doing that intentionally, but your words are hurting them because they can't handle the same words you tell yourself. So you're going to have to stick a filter in there to say, I want to tell them, get some guts and show 15 plans, but what I want to do is say, you know, you and I both struggled on showing plans at the beginning, but I know you have it in you to do that.
Yeah.
So if you can figure out, you can deliver the message, just real quickly, one of the examples I use on this is, okay, let's say I have a 76 azimuth yacht. I can go down there with my hands, my bare hands, and take that and press against that yacht enough to where I can move the whole front end of that yacht just by pressing it.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is take, if we take, instead of just using the hands, if I said, hey, why don't you get my 33-foot boat and Team Fountain boat and speed that up at 60 miles an hour and go hit that front end. Boy, if it hits that front end, it does move the boat just like my hands did, but something else happens. We have internal damage. We got leak. You know, both of them accomplish the task, but one of them actually does more damage than the task accomplished. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people do more damage by trying to correct something. And it's like, as a general principle, until you've learned this, I'd say no correction. I'd rather you do no correction and just do encouragement and allow the CDs, allow the seminar, allow the books to do the correcting for you, and you just be the biggest encourager, because most people quit the business because they're discouraged. They don't need you to pile on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So improper correction. I mean, I mentor with you. I love it when we do, because you always make me feel phenomenal. But then at the end, I get the, okay, here's what I need to do. We talked a little bit about improper method. That's using the axe to get the fly off the head. Just real briefly, improper timing.
Sparky Anderson, a coach, used to be the former manager of the Detroit Tigers. They won a World Series in 1984. He said something profound that I heard when I was a kid, and I got it later as I started building this business. He said that I was always hardest on the Tigers when they were winning. Because when they were winning, they had a self-esteem capable of taking the correction and still knowing they were going to win. Remember that statement I said earlier, that winners think like winners even when they're losing. But most people cannot keep that type of thinking when they go into some struggles. They start beating themselves up enough. You don't need to pile on. So you got to look at the timing. When Art's on fire, when Orion's on fire, man, things are going great. Man, I'm so proud of you. You accomplished this, this, and this. I said, but I'll tell you what, you want to take it to the next level? See, that's the time where I could say, man, imagine if we took your character, imagine if we took that tact, that relationship side to the next level. Imagine if you became the top edifier. Man, everybody's giving you so much recognition now, Orrin, but imagine if you became the strongest edifier of other people's accomplishments. We'd compound this victory to 5, 10 times what it is now. So I've just corrected Orrin, but in a way that he's going to be, man, I'm already rolling, and he just gave me another good nugget to take it. Versus, let's say that you're just lost one group, your volume's been cut in half, and I say, Orrin, until you start edifying, your business will keep going backwards.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, no one can take, man, they're already beating themselves up because they've been hit on these points. We don't need to throw gas on that fire. I mean, one of the things a mentor has to know is when things are going great, how do I throw gas on that fire to make it bigger? And when things aren't going great and it's a fire in the wrong direction, how do I throw water to slow that down so that it doesn't destroy the person in the process?
Brilliant. Improper correction, improper method, improper timing. I probably have another 12 there. But we are here towards the end of our conversation. Dinner just showed up, or at least I think it did. One of the things that I love to leave this on is that, as I look at both of you, and I just can't imagine, I'm so excited about, our friendships over the next 150 years. But one thing that I look at each of you, I say, I never want to let you down. Like, I feel that to my core. I'd hate for you guys to call me one day and say, Art, you let me down. And I think that's part of the mentorship role, and I think it goes both ways as it progresses. So.
And I just love that last piece there, because that is that in society we often grow up with people actually using a lot of authority and power, while what you're saying is leave all of that behind. That's in society. That's from the philosophers several hundred years back, and true leadership is inspirational leadership, where you empower people, and the idea of every meeting you have, any encounter with another human being, or for that sake an animal, is to leave that person better off than when you first met them.
Perfect. As you can see, we're always working on us. We have a long journey ahead of us. We're always learning. I hope those of you listening here learn something from here and are always seeking knowledge to do better. Orjan Saele, thank you. Orrin Woodward, thank you. It's been an amazing, amazing conversation here.
Thank you.
Thank you.